Welcome to the CBT Nugget Cisco TSHOOT series. My name is Jeremy Cioara, and I'd like to call this little introduction the end at the beginning. See, because for you, this is probably the first nugget you're watching of this entire series, but for me, it's the very last one. See, I've already recorded this entire series and put it all into place, and I thought when I reached the end, I thought, I've got to go back and I've got to set some expectations, because this is a very different series. See, here's the predicament. So I took the Cisco TSHOOT exam, which is just amazing. It's all hands-on, it's very real world, all on troubleshooting scenarios. So I came out of that exam just scratching my head, just thinking, how do I teach someone to troubleshoot? I mean, you can't just create a lesson saying, oh, here's the show commands that you'll need, because it changes, and just seeing show output isn't going to help, or here's the debug commands you're going to use. And I'm sitting here just thinking, how do I teach this? How do I teach this? How do I teach this? And I thought, well, how do you teach somebody in your own company? I have 2 consulting companies. How do I teach a new person that is coming on board how to do many of the tasks and do troubleshooting and handle support calls and things like that? And just the word that kept ringing through my mind is apprenticeship. I just thought, well, what I do is I say, well, hey, I've got a job at IO Data this weekend. Why don't you come hang out with me and help out? And so we go there, and it's, I'm at a data center just working on the rack, and I have them doing some cabling. Yeah, I'm sure I'm getting some benefit out of it. They're doing the labeling and all that kind of stuff, and I'm configuring the VLANs and setting up the layer 3 links, and about halfway through I'm like, this isn't working like I thought. And they're looking over my shoulder, and they're like, oh, what's going on? I kind of explain it to them, and long story short, you both start brainstorming together, and in the end, you figure it out, hopefully, and they get something out of it. They kind of gain that experience and walking through it, and I gain some more experience and add it to my belt, and then we kind of walk out with some more experience under our belts, and being able to figure it all out. And I thought, well, that's what I want to be able to replicate in this series. But then now I'm challenged again, going, well, how do I do that? I mean, how do I teach a CBT Nuggets series where I'm sitting at a data center, and it's kind of like I walk into a brand new situation, and I'm thinking, well, do I set up some labs in GNS3, or maybe just build some lab equipment and cable it up and kind of, make kind of like broken things that I figure out? And I'm thinking, well, I can't do that. You can't know the answer coming into the troubleshooting scenario and really expect it to be helpful to troubleshoot. I mean, if I shut down an interface and I'm walking into it and recording and be like, well, wow, it seems like that's not pinging. It's like, I think about it. I think about my kids when we play hide and go seek. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm like, okay, go hide, and they go run into a corner and put their head into the corner, and I walk out. I'm like, where is she? I see her right there, and I'm like, well, she's right there. I kind of like fake it, but everybody knows I know where she is. And so I'm thinking, well, I can't just pre-rig troubleshooting scenarios, because it won't be real. I'll just kind of be like, well, it's not that. Well, let's look. Oh, look, it's shut down. It just wouldn't work out. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, well, what if I did this? What if I rented labs that were completely geared to the troubleshooting series, the Cisco TSHOOT series, and I don't even look at them. I walk in blind into these labs and just put it on the recorder, and just start recording it. And so I bounced it off a couple of instructors. By the way, this is our little mascot for the series. He starts every recording, and this is pretty much me for this series, because I bounced this idea off a couple of instructors, and they go, dude, you're crazy. You're crazy. It's like, you don't walk into a classroom unprepared. You got to review the material. You got to know what you're walking into. And I go, well, yeah, but I said that's like the antithesis of what I'm trying to accomplish with TSHOOT. I want to walk in blind and see what happens. And it's funny. I thought back to when I first started teaching, I taught a company called US West. They eventually came quest about this up-and-coming technology called DSL. And I remember getting in front of the room, and it was just my first time teaching. And hi, I'm Jeremy, and It like I have that same feeling coming into this series. And I'm sure I say it somewhere in the series. I feel like this is like the Blair Witch Project, because that's what I end up doing. Is I walk into just lab scenario after lab scenario with the camera rolling, and if you've ever seen the Blair Witch Project, it's just kind of like. I'm running around, shadows are jumping out, scary things are happening. That's what this series is all about. So it's crazy. It's a crazy series. It's very unconventional, but I think by the time it's said and done, it's going to be pretty valuable, because it's literally just scenario after scenario after scenario where I review a topic, and then I go through just troubleshooting scenarios where I'm walking in blind. So expect to see this. I just want to in this opening video, I just want to set your expectations for the series. Expect to first off have some very unconventional training, to where instead of it just like here's information, there's a lot of well, that ping didn't work. I would have thought that would have worked. Let's think about that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. So when you're there, when you're watching these things happen, put your mind in the driver's seat. I mean, you may pause the video, that's fine, and just let it, just think about, what would I do? What would I research? Where would I go? And then, unpause it, because I'm probably wondering the same thing myself. That's one thing I can promise through this whole series, is I did not edit anything. Well, here's what I did do. If I ever got stuck and had to think about something, I would pause it, but I committed to myself that I would not solve anything without the camera rolling. Meaning I would not do any show commands, I would not do a behind the scenes debug, I would not try and figure things out and then bring it back and then say, well, I wanted people to join me as we trouble through things together. So I will tell you, things do not always go right in this series. But if you've ever gone through labs before, if they all go right, you don't really learn as much as when they go wrong and you really just have to bang your head against the wall and figure it out. And there's a lot of that as we go through. But the one thing I will promise is, as we go through, the labs have clearly defined objectives. We know what we're trying to accomplish. And at the very end, on the summary slide, I bring it all back and I say, okay, let's see if we did this right. And I bring up the lab guide solution, bring it up and walk through, and I go, okay, we got that. Oh, look at, and I will tell you, there's times, I remember times where I got through and the lab was well, the lab said, I'm like, how do I say this? I was wrong. I know I went after a wrong direction. I did discover there's some errors in the lab itself as well. The labs are not perfect. Sometimes they would ask you for an impossible scenario, or they wouldn't give you enough information at the beginning, and we worked through all those. Now, I will say the exam is not that way. As a matter of fact, one of the things I wanted to do here was I want to show you the exam. If you haven't started preparing for this exam, just go into Google right up here and type in TSHOOT tutorial. It'll take you right here. This is the first link that you'll get off of Google, which is Cisco Learning Network. And I would encourage you to check out all of these. They give you, for example, the whole topology that you will be using in the actual lab. So you know every single network diagram, you know the IP addresses, it's all given to you beforehand, so you can go and get familiar, kind of immerse yourself in the topology before you go take the exam. They have Cisco knows this is a very different exam from anything they've ever released. So let me show you what one of these exam questions look like. This is it. Comes up and says, here's your TSHOOT trouble tickets. Down below you have some buttons for the exhibits. You can click on the scenario, just saying, hey, we've got this topology, the IP addresses are something like this, you've got default gateway. Layer 2 topology pops up as a separate window, and you can see everything's resizable. I mean, this is literally what the exam looks like. It's almost like you have your own kind of Linuxy feeling desktop, to where you actually have more space than what I'm showing you here, but you can go through and see all the different topologies, look at the layer 3 topology, and kind of arrange the windows however you want. Now again, you have more desktop space, so you're not like let's just scroll this over. You can see the whole topology in the actual labs and minimize them. And then you go into the trouble tickets. Over here on the right hand side, you can see there's 4 tickets. Now within the ticket, you can actually move back and forth, answer the question here, next question, and go to the previous. So unlike many Cisco exams, you can go back and forth, but once you finish a ticket, like once you solve ticket 1's done. You're not going back to it. It's all over. And this is literally the exam. I mean, the exam starts off with like 2 or 3 multiple choice, very, very straight up design questions on multiple choice, and then the rest of it is just working through these tickets. 4, 5, 6 different tickets that you're actually going to have we'll have a variety of scenarios that they do. Now, the tickets are very focused. They're going to be geared around a specific issue or group of issues that you're solving. So, for example, when you bring up ticket 1, it says, okay, we've got an implementation group doing a proof of concept. Client 1 and 2 have to access this web server. Looks like there's a ticket open that client 1 cannot ping that address. So you have to figure out, let me go to the previous one, you have to figure out, well, what device is that located on? And you say, well, let's choose router 1. You hit next. It says, okay, well, the fault condition would be related to what technology? And you say, well, it's actually based on my diagnostic, this static routing. Now you might say, well, how do you figure all that out? Well, when you pull up the topology, every single one of these devices are live. You can click on it, access it, hit the enter key, enable. I'm in privilege mode. Show IP interface brief. I mean, shortcuts work. Config T. Oh, well, I should say almost everything works. The shortcuts work. The show commands work. Now, remember, on the TSHOOT exam, your goal is to diagnose the issue. So, for example, when you come here, it says, what is this related to? Well, based on the, such and such, it looks like the interface is shut down, or it looks like the wrong encapsulation is specified. You have to go through and diagnose it. It is not your job to fix it. If you ever try and go into global config mode, you will get a command like that to just say, you are a diagnoser. You answer the ticket, say, this is exactly what's wrong. It's up to somebody else to fix it. Now, I will say, in this series, we do fix it. We go through, we do pings, we diagnose, and we end up solving the problem. But on the actual exam, you're just identifying it. So I guess you could say that we go a little above and beyond in the series. Now, I will tell you, when you start this exam, don't try to work the system. I wasted a lot of time on this exam because I thought, this seems like I could worry. Like, when I click on, okay, well, it's on router 1, I hit next, and it says, okay, it's related to which technology? And I was like, okay, so this is the only 4 things it could be. So what I would do is I would go back to the topology and say, okay, is there something wrong with the static routes? No. Okay, is there something wrong with the interface status? Like, is there an interface shut down? You see what I mean? Like, I'm trying to work the test by saying, it's giving me 4 areas, so it must be one of these 4 things. Well, actually, no, because this whole exam is multi-path. To where, for instance, now in this little tutorial or demo that they have right here, it won't be, but on the actual exam, when you click on router 2 and you say, well, it's actually on router 2, and hit next, it will give you a completely different list of technologies that could be wrong. You might say, well, OSPF configuration, or the summarization between router 2 and router 3, or so you can't work the system. I tried. Don't waste your time. It's completely multipath. So essentially, if you get the first answer wrong, like for instance, if you go, I think the issue's on router 1, the rest of this will be totally whacked. Like these answers won't be correct. The next one won't be. You kind of go. It's like you took the wrong path initially, and now you are lost in the woods. So you can go back, and that's one of the nice things on this. You can go back and forth within a trouble ticket. Once you submit the ticket, it's done. You cannot come back to it. You've moved on to the next ticket. Now, one of the things I will say is, unlike many of the other Cisco exams, this exam takes some time. I think it's the longest of all the CCNP exams that exist out there. I want to say 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It's long. And it's going to take a long time. I mean, and if you think about it, you only have 4, 5, 6 tickets that are on here, and that's it. That's the totality of the exam. So don't feel bad to sit here and troubleshoot on router 2. Doing show IP, IP protocols, doing all the commands that you want to do to diagnose the issue. Because you have to realize you can take a long time on this, and you'll get that feeling when we go through this series. I mean, there is times where I'm on one router for 30 minutes going, I think this is it, and then I have to say, okay, well, let's take a break, guys, and let's come back to this, and we kind of pick up in the next nugget and go from there. So again, I just want to give you a feel for what this series is like, because it is very similar to the actual exam. Okay, last thing I'll mention, and then we'll launch into the series. What I did originally when I recorded the series was I went through and just did all the troubleshooting. Like, I intended this series to be nothing but the troubleshooting experience going through it. So I reached the end of recording all that, and I thought, some of it needs to be broken up to where some of the topics may be a little fuzzy. I know you've probably gone through Cisco Route and Cisco Switch. You've solidified those in your mind, but it may have been a while since you've done BGP or